moving on. Marcus Garvey. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want us to go into a little bit more. I want to do my own video because I wrote down notes and everything, and I'm gonna read up on his work and books and stuff like that. And I want to create my own video going in depth on his life and legacy. But the reason why I'm bringing it up, right, is because I came across this on Twitter, and I do follow her. She follows me, and it's not her. So she tweeted a article that came out by American Experience, Marcus Garvey Must Go campaign. And this was published by PBS.org. So CC Freeman, she was like, Black American freedmen, civil rights leaders, activists, radicals, and scholars wanted Marcus Garvey out of the United States because he was a grifter and spoke against Negroes. He told white people they were superior and right. And this was the article she was referencing. And I understand her comment, why she would comment that from reading this article. But we have to be careful about propaganda because this article is false propaganda because it's a slanderous article, but this is something that did happen. You did have a Philip Randolph start a campaign, Garvey Must Go, with others. W.E.B. Du Bois did criticize Marcus Garvey. However, years later, he swung back and said, you know what, I was wrong, and I apologize. So W.B. Du Bois apologized for his slanderous remarks against Marcus Garvey because he realized Marcus Garvey was correct in what he was trying to do. So I'm not going
to... Don't forget Booker T. Washington endorsing him.
Booker T. Washington wrote a letter in 1914 as a sponsorship. And then with that sponsorship letter, 2 years later, Marcus Garvey arrives in the United States in 1916. But when he do arrive, Booker T was dead. And then apparently Booker T. Washington colleagues that was to, live off his, to continue his legacy, did not like Marcus Garvey. So yes, Marcus Garvey wrote him a sponsorship letter to get him over here. And by the time Marcus Garvey got over here, he died already, Booker T.
Okay, now
they didn't have much interaction.
Let me break this down very quickly. You had factions. You had a triumvirate that was at war. Garvey got involved in this peripherally, but the war was between W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. There is a lot of recent propaganda making Booker T. Washington a hero, but essentially he was not talking about Black folks developing vocational skills. It's just be satisfied wherever you are. And if you're good, your children are good, grandchildren are good, then your great-grandchildren may benefit from some grateful white folk and they may get benefits. That's the way it was taken. My grandfather hated Booker T. Washington's guts with an intense passion. Both of them did. And they were, to an extent, contemporaries. They were in their 50s when Booker T. was in his prime. So there is that family history I disclosed. But W.E.B. Du Bois was the person that was saying we need to essentially lead a revolution and use force even if necessary to get what we want. Booker T. was saying, be satisfied with what you have, be nice. That's been modified, and each generation it flips back and forth to an extent. Now, Marcus Garvey was sponsored by Booker T. Washington. So that made him an enemy of W.E.B. Du Bois. And what's going on is there's a lot of animosity that developed because at the time all of this was going on, 1914, there were some people like me who had been born in the 5th decade of the preceding century who were in their late 60s, early 70s, and they were either in the Caribbean or in the United States. And what happened is in the 1840s, the Maroons in Jamaica. And prior to that, within their father's lifetime or slightly before, Toussaint Louverture had gotten Haiti free from the French. So those people looked down as just embarrassments upon American, mainland American Black folk is less than less for having to be freed by Massa Lincoln and the Civil War rather than getting themselves free. So people who were alive 20 some years old when this happened were my age when this is going on. And there was this animosity between DuBois, who was saying it's embarrassing that we needed the Civil War for Black folk to be free. They should have gotten themselves free, like the Maroons, et cetera, and the Haitians, et cetera, and the others that took Booker T's position. Now, you have Philip Randolph, and through him, you get into this thing with the Black Pullman car porters. They were unionized.
Philip Randolph was a boule.
Yeah. Now, that was, okay, well, Pullman car porters, but you have to understand that at the time, outside of doctors, a few Black doctors, very few Black lawyers, and some others like that, the creme de la creme in the Black community, Pullman car porters, chauffeurs, and butlers. So this Black boule is very much opposed to somebody who is very dark-skinned, heavy-set, speaks with patois because he comes from Jamaica, man, and he's Caribbean, and he sweats a lot, and he dresses up in these posturing uniforms, and they accused him of what essentially would be today a Ponzi scheme. Right. I don't know whether it's true or not. It wasn't of that great a concern to me because Garvey was a footnote who basically confined himself to economics rather than to political consequence. Now, W.E.B. Du Bois made a lot of changes in life. He was a co-founder, one of the three. One was a Jewish guy, one was a Jewish woman. And then there was W.E.B. Du Bois,
who Falls organization.
That led to the NAACP, of which he was one of the three founders.
But he also funded eugenics.
I know, but I'm just saying, aside from that, Du Bois' transition, he denounced the NAACP. He wound up renouncing his citizenship and left the country because he didn't want to be bothered with it. About this time, he's starting, just like Malcolm did, but he didn't die or get killed like Malcolm did. He started saying, yes, what Garvey was talking about, an international economic base is very important. So I revised my position on Marcus Garvey. Meanwhile, the boule hated Marcus Garvey with a passion.
Right. I watched.
That's like the boule hates my guts, or the boule then would be just like the bunch that was supporting what's her name in Georgia for senator, Tracy Abrams for governor. Yeah, that would be a direct parallel against.
Right. So last night I watched, because remember me and you was on the phone talking about something totally different. We ain't gonna talk about it now. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta do some notes because I was watching Dr. Henry Clark, a video. It was a YouTube video. It's this YouTuber, and they have all of his old videotape lectures. And it was in 1990, and he did an hour-long lecture on Marcus Garvey in 1990 at the Newark Public Library. So when I put this as a clip, I'll put that link for people to watch it. Watching that video, everything that man said, it made me think of you. That is because a lot of things he said you've mentioned, because he went into the, and remember I was fighting you on the Maroons. Please, let's not talk about it right now. We're going to do a whole separate show on the Maroons next week. But I do owe you an apology as far as the Maroons, but I also have some more insight on that as well. but a lot of things he said, you echoed already, right? So it made me think of you, and I'm actually sending you that video itself.
Let
And,
me go get a book while you're talking. I can hear you.
okay,
Keep talking. I'm going to show you the
right.
cover on the
And
book.
one of the reasons why I love Dr. Henry Clark is because I can understand his scholarship and you know, and his speeches, because he comes from antecedents. He puts everything in antecedents. That means chronological order, and it's very important. So when he talked about Marcus Garvey and he laid it out, he went back 100 years before Marcus Garvey was even born. So I'm not going to go into details with that now. The purpose of me even bringing up Marcus Garvey today is because when I came across that tweet, and I think we just have to, and this is for my audience and people listening, we have to be careful what we read today. We have to be careful how people depict our scholars, our intellects, our activists, our true freedom fighters, especially of yesteryear time. Because this American Experience article, Marcus Garvey Must Go, was a fictitious claim to get him out of the picture. And it was it was started by the Black Boule. And it just says here, on January 15, 1923, a group of 8 prominent African-Americans petitioned Attorney General Harry M. Daugherty, asking the U.S. government to continue its prosecution of Garvey on charges of mail fraud and to investigate acts of violence attributed to Garvey's followers, among them the assassination in early 1923 of New Orleans of J.W.H. Eason. He was Garvey's former deputy. So, you know, Garvey eventually was convicted of mail fraud in 1923. He was jailed in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, where he served 3 years of 5 years. And then in 1927, he would be deported from the United States, never to return. They took away his passport. He couldn't come back. But my point is, just because you are reading something, even if it comes from PBS, right? Supposed to be these prominent news outlets, doesn't mean that is true. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't mean that's what actually happened. You have to do your own research. You have to listen to scholars like Judge Joe Brown, like Dr. Henry Clark and others, and you have to read and do the research yourself.
I'm not a scholar.
What are you?
What I am is a practitioner. And in the process of practicing, I have to learn the subject. I did not spend my adult career writing books and trying to convey something. I had to study these things because they were the grist that was in the mill when it came to doing what I did and other things. Now, this is a book that you might want to consider looking at.
The Iron Horn, The Defeat of the British by the Jamaican Maroons. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I bought this book in Jamaica upon recommendations of the Prime Minister, personal recommendations. Now, it's very interesting. You might want to read it so you see what's going on. And another person who recommended it to me was a Maroon lieutenant, big 6'5". You would have loved his brother. This dude, like, I mean, doing one-arm chin-ups, you know.
Oh, just real quick. And I did not know Prince Hall, who was a Masonic, is Jamaican.
Prince Hall Lodge. See, all of these were American colonies, North American colonies, Barbados, Bermuda.
I mean, well, he was African,
Jamaica.
but
I'm saying the way the British looked at it was their American colonies, which included Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, the Bahamas, and the Americas. So all of those were their American colonies. They didn't make any distinction. When that colony, 13, that group of 13 mainland colonies decided to split. And remember, there's still another mainland colony that stayed, that's Canada. That split everything open. So Black folk today take the white folks' demarcation, which was when the 13 mainland colonies split off from Britain, leaving the northern mainland colony, Canada, with Britain, and the Caribbean and West Atlantic colonies with Britain. We take the white man's split point and start defining who our affiliates are, which I think is defeating the purpose. And it is reflective of white supremacy, in my opinion, to be downing Africans and Caribbeans because they weren't product of the same system that they actually were part of, because the Brits said, okay, they split. So that's kind of crazy. If you're into white supremacy, why accept white definitions and white circumstances and considerations? It's inconsistent. But that's the case you have with this division. And there was a lot of that going on. And the Boule
was a division going on in Jamaica too, but
the same thing right now. You know, we can't deal with them. They weren't over here for the slavery. They're this, they're that, blah, 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 blah,
that's
blah.
a tactic. That's a war tactic to use when you divide a group of people to make them feel as though they're going against each other, so that other people could come in and conquer and take over. 1 second.
And then say we still forget about Toussaint Louverture,
right?
Who his accomplishment was, remember, the ruler of France was Napoleon Bonaparte, the Napoleon, Emperor Napoleon, and Toussaint Louverture beat his commanders in Haiti to throw them out and achieve Haitian independence. See, that's something where you whip elements of the best army in the whole world at the time. And here we are in America. We were 1/3 of the population, and we had to wait to Master Lincoln in the Civil War.
Right. Drew, they keep saying, is Drew asleep?
Huh? No.
I think we're talking too black for Drew right now. And I just want to say thank you to Rachel for the Cash App. I did pin Judge Joe Brown support. Go support his website. Let me just pull that up before we get into the last, and that will be pop culture. Yes, I'm pulling the judge into more pop culture BS. But most importantly, go to jjb2023.com, send Brown downtown, Memphis for Mayor 2023. You go to the website, sign up. Yeah, you can click the donate button. You could use your card, or you could go to Cash App and put in $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. So yeah, support Judge Joe Brown, send Brown downtown.
Yeah, we're going to take that city back and make it a mecca for everybody in the 21st century. It's going to be the new Detroit for the United States, even in spite of the likely opposition from the city council, who will have their pet little under the table crumb snatching moments jeopardized. But I'm going to take the crumbs and the cake away from them. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge him, Joe Brown.